This fly from Mary Orvis Marbury's book, Favorite Flies and Their Histories, is called the jungle cock, and it will be obvious why when I attach the wings. I'm tying it from the illustration in Mary Orvis Marbury's book, Favorite Flies and Their Histories, which was published in 1892. Also comparing it to the illustration in a new biography about Mary Orvis Marbury called Mary Orvis Marbury, A Life in Flies. Tying it on a number 2 sproat hook that I have cut the eye off of in order to create a blind eye, and then I am attaching a leader. The leader would have originally been made from the contents of the silk moth caterpillar's silk gland. It was called gut. I make my own fake gut using silk thread, which I wax and twist together, just for the fun of tying these flies kind of in their original spirit. Lashing that leader on with silk thread creates a very firm attachment, very fishable, although I don't imagine that this would be a fly we would fish today. It's a little bit on the unusual side, I think. So I use silk thread because that's what the Orvis company used. I use claret because I don't have the dark lacquers that they used, and I think the color of the heads on the flies is that claret color, which would be what happens when you lacquer red with a dark lacquer. I wax the silk for a couple of reasons. One is to preserve the silk. The other is to help it to grab onto the materials that I'm tying onto the hook. And take that down here quite into the bend. And I'm going to tie in a piece of gold tinsel, and I am using an old metal tinsel. I want to be a little bit conscious that I don't get too much bulk built up back here too, though, and that's going to be one of the challenges of this fly, because I am putting in a gold tag and I am putting in some barbs for the tail, and in order not to get those too bulky back here, I need to be careful. So I think what I will do is tie this tinsel in up the shank a little ways. That'll help keep that, and it's winding itself around the shank. I think that's not a problem. But what I'm trying to do is to keep an even body, because I will be doing a floss body. I can just wiggle that tinsel off, keep my thread waxed, and bring that back to the back, where I will tie in some barred wood duck for the tail. Bring that right in on top of where the tag is. So this is barred wood duck, and I have just a little slip of that, which I will tie in curved up. It's a pretty long tail. If I pull it forward a little bit, it helps it from folding back over the back of the shank. And then I'll wrap up over the top of that as well. Keep that as even on the body as I can. And then I'm going to do 4 strands of 300 denier red silk. And I'll go ahead and wrap those in from pretty close to the front of the hook all the way down the shank. That will give me that even body when I wrap it. And take it down here right to where that hook bend starts. Oh, almost forgot one step here. Before I wrap that body material, I do need to put in some ribbing as well. And go ahead and tie that in the length as well. Should have tied the ribbing in first, but it will be all right. So I am using an oval gold tinsel for the ribbing. I could use wire, I suppose, but I have found that the wire that I have anyway, tends to have more of a copper tone to it than the gold, and so I want it to be gold. So I'll use the gold oval, which is nicely gold, and then try to wrap an even body. With using 4 strands like this and getting those strands laying next to each other, then they wrap over and create a good coverage on that hook. I'm not real happy with how fat it is back here at the back. I would like it to be a little bit thinner at the back, but I think the illustration, although the fly also in the photograph has a very narrow body back at the back end there, so I'm not sure how exactly the Orvis tires, whether it was Mary that tied that fly or one of the other ladies at the company that tied that fly for the book. So the flies were tied and then sent to an illustrator. I think Charles Orvis did some of the illustrating, but I'm not sure that he did all of it. And then color lithographs were made in order to print color for the book. And the book was actually quite a masterful piece of publicity for the company. There was talk of doing a color catalog. What catalogs generally, I think, were given away and not sold, and so in order to not cost the company, they actually published a book with all of these flies, and they did not put recipes. Occasionally an ingredient is spoken of. A lot of times the ingredients are pretty clear what they are, but they specifically did not list ingredients because they wanted people to buy the flies from the company and not tie them themselves. So gold oval tinsel rib. Could use wire, I suppose, if you have a wire that's nicely colored gold. I learned, when I learned to tie, to put 3 wraps to tie in ingredients. 2, 3 over the top, and then pull back and wrap tight 2 or 3 times underneath to catch it in or to secure it in, and then you can clip off the extra. I'd like that tail to curve up. For the hackle, I'm going to use, I think we call this furnace. So it's a feather that has a dark interior with a almost white tips, which is pretty clear that that's what was used for the original fly, at least those colors, whatever we call it. So I've clipped it off so that I've taken all the dark from the bottom where I'm starting to get the white. It's not a very long tip on this feather, but I think it'll be enough. And then I just clip off the barbs along the stem. It's called a rachis, and I call that a crew cut. I call that a crew cut, not that it was my term, but it was one that I picked up from reading and following other tyers. But it gives the thread something to grab onto to make sure that that hackle feather is attached to the hook. I'll wax my thread before I turn the hackle on, and I'll grab that. So it's a fairly short feather. I'll grab it by the tip with my hackle plier. I did tie it in with the shiny side out because I want the hackle barbs to lean back, but I'm also going to help them a little bit more because this is a rooster feather. The barbs are going to tend to stand up, and I want the barbs to lean back to the back of the hook. So I'm just going to take one wrap over that tip to hold it in place, then I can let go of it. And I'm going to wet my fingers and pull back on all the hackle barbs. And there's some sticking to my thread. Okay, and there's still, all right, got them. And then I will wrap back over the hackle. That will securely catch in that tip, but also will make the barbs lay back down along or towards the hook point, hook bend. Just grab the tip and snap it out. Because this is a wet fly, I did use a rooster hackle because both the illustration and the actual fly have a very fine barbed hackle, which is more characteristic of rooster than it is of hen. But I want them to lay back, and rooster hackle likes to stand up and not lay back. So by wrapping against them, wetting my fingers, pulling back, and then wrapping against them towards the back, that gets them to lay down. I want a little bit more room here for tying in the wings. So this is called the jungle cock, and it's called the jungle cock because it uses jungle cock nails for the wing. So I'm going to measure that. I want it about the length of the body. Measure that and cut it off right there. Peel back on the barbs at the base a little bit just to give me a little bit of clean stem or rachis to tie into, and then I want two of those, so if I lay the one I cut on top of my other jungle cock feather, I can get them to be the same length. Use that to cut it also. Pull off the barbs at the end. Now I do have them back to back, so I will just lay those in the middle of the top hackle here and wrap up on those together. And then hopefully I've got them properly standing up back to back on top. I'm going to be okay with that. I would like them maybe a little bit further back. Let's see if I can just push them a little bit and pull back on all these hackle barbs again. and then wrap the head. Put some more wax on the thread. So I've got hackle barbs that I want to make sure I don't trap in, and I've got that leader that I want to make sure I don't trap in. Try to come out here a little bit closer to the front of the hook without going off the end of the hook, and wrap the head. Put a little bit more wax on that, and then I'm going to do some half hitches, which has been a little bit of a challenge too on these snelled hooks, to get my loop big enough so that I can go around. Go around the leader, not catch any hackle barbs in, and then cinch it down on the front of the hook. And coming off the front of the hook there. Once the first one's tied in, then it's not going to come unwrapped. So then the second and third are a little bit easier to tie on. Get those cinched down good. One more. All right. And keep pulling it off. Oh, now I've got a hackle barb caught. All right. Let's see if I can grab that barb. Pull it out. Get that knot up on top of the shank. Pull it tight. And I'll just take my scissors and push it against the thread. In a contemporary twist, I'm going to put a drop of diluted goop on the head. It does turn the head darker while it's wet, but when that diluted goop dries, it will dry the color of the thread.